Tonight, for more than 2 years, it was called partnership, the perfect partnership. But with no new major successful convictions and a blurring line between the DCI and the DPP, can the unwinnable war on graft be won?
Wala kuna mzozo wote baina yetu sisi na DCI wala na EACC.
So such things, I can assure you, they usually do happen time to time. But if they recur again or we see it again, that is when we can always see there is a problem.
Ni kitu muna create. Kama watu wawili wameninio huko officers, sisi as principals we have no problem.
Also tonight on the Primetime News, the coronavirus crisis, the first case in South Africa, the fifth in the African continent, and the measures adopted by the World Health Organization to the virus that started in the city of Wuhan in Hubei province in China, as the number clocks more than 96,000. On News Compass tonight, we turn our attention to the war on corruption or graft in the country that is undergoing both moral and political paralysis. With a fading public trust and a dimming partnership between the DCI and the DPP, Nurdin Haji and Judge Kinoti, can the duo win and win big? The 5th of March 2020. I am Ayub Abdikadir Abdi. Our sign anchor tonight is Joyce Wamwangi. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Welcome to the Primetime News, and the short SMS code is 40920. The hashtag on Twitter is News Compass. Later, we'll sample some of your feedback here on the broadcast. Now, the DCI and the DPP have refuted claims of falling out in the war on corruption in the country. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, and his counterpart at the DCI, Judge Kinoti, refuted claims of a fallout following Tuesday's incident which played out in the court of law here in the country, involving the Managing Director of the Kenya Airports Authority as mere squabble between junior officers. This comes even as the Senate and Justice Legal Affairs Committee has summoned both Nurdin Haji and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, Judge Kinoti, over the matter.
In a rare show of unity, the government siblings tasked with winning the fight against corruption appear together to discredit reports that all is not rosy between them. And when the questions were put inquiring on the status of Tuesday's incident between the DCI and the DPP's office, the two became defensive.
Hatujakosana wala kuna mzozo wote baina yetu sisi na DCI wala na EACC. Mambo haya ni mambo watu tu wanafikiria na wanataka kuyaleta. Maana kuna watu wengi hawafurahi namna kazi inayofanya.
So such things, I can assure you, they usually do happen time to time. But if they recur again or we see it again, that is when we can always see there is a problem.
The angered DPP said that Tuesday's incident in the case of the MD of Kenya Ports Authority, Daniel Manduku, was a mere incident between junior officers and that the media blew the whole situation out of proportion.
Ni kitu muna create. Kama watu wawili wameninio huko officers, sisi as principals we have no problem.
It has been reported that DCI Judge Kinoti has been frustrated over the whole incident, and just like his fellow colleague, he rebuked the notion.
Kama kitu imefanyika, ni kosa inaweza kufanyika, sisi ni binadamu. Haimaanishi tumepigana.
What the DPP has said, it was just something BCD, but absolutely wishful thinking. People may perceive build many mountains out of something very simple.
But their body language said otherwise.
Ama mnataka tupigane makamama ndio mtakuwa na hakika kwamba.
The three horsemen tasked with the fight against graft, Twali Mbarak, Nurdin Haji and Judge Kinoti, revealed that 5 banks have entered into a plea bargain deal that will spare chief executives from facing criminal charges for facilitating theft on NYS funds.
In our attempt to find resolutions in some of the many corruption issues that we've been dealing with, we've therefore come in agreement with the banks, and a total of 385 million has been realized by us, and all this money will be deposited in the prosecution fund and will be restituted back.
As the two shadow box in power games and each office flex its muscle in the fight against corruption, none of the officers is yet to secure a conviction 2 years in office. Abdikadir Hashimi, Brew TV.
Now, ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi and Kenya's Martha Karua have castigated President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga for denying Kenyans the hard copies of the Building Bridges Initiative Task Force report. Musalia's remarks were, however, refuted by the ODM party's Secretary General Edwin Sifuna, who said the government is not imposing the BBI on Kenyans. This even as the debate on the divisions continue with regards to the rallies that continue across the country in the popularization of the task force's report, which was launched in November 2019.
It's 5 months now since President Uhuru Kenyatta and the opposition chief Raila Odinga unveiled the BBI document at the Bomas of Kenya, with the head of state Uhuru Kenyatta promising Kenyans to get access to the copies as soon as possible. But the efforts by the common mwananchi to get access to the copies 5 months down the line has proved futile, with the politicians now taking up the matter to popularize the report. According to the ODM Party Secretary General Edwin Sifuna, Kenyans can find the copy on social media.
But I am sure Kenyans have seen that there has been an attempt at least to provide soft copies. I'll be very surprised if there's anyone here who is not on WhatsApp, because my mother and grandmother are on WhatsApp.
Is there somebody who may want to have limited exposure of the report of the BBI by design? What would be the motive of not having that document out?
Copies must be availed to all, and this is a responsibility of the government, because the commission is a commission that was appointed by the government, gazetted, and it's supposed to give its report to be read and be analyzed by all in Kenya.
The leaders led by the ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi and his Kenya counterpart Martha Karua, while addressing Kenyans on several issues during the second edition of the People Dialogue Festival, organized by the Center for Multi-Party Democracy CMD, faulted the government for failure to avail the hard copies to the Kenyans.
If the BBI is gazetted, and it's an initiative by the government and the opposition, and indeed they want to see it through, why aren't you making the necessary resources available to distribute this document? If you don't have the resources, is it by design or is it because there are genuinely no resources?
You can either sit and lament as you wait for the hard copy, or you can do in the interim what I want to propose.
Thank you.
Is you can be able to avail yourself of a soft copy of the document.
Right, but you're writing on the assumption that everyone has a smartphone, right? But my grandmother has a smartphone in the village. That she can access also internet, and we have the internet infrastructure.
It's not an assumption. It's not an assumption.
Started last year by the CMD Kenya, the People Dialogue Festival presents a unique opportunity for the political parties, politicians, policymakers, and those in the civil society.
So the BBI is supposed to be about issues and not about personalities.
Most of this material should be availed to the Kenyan citizens so that our discussions on BBI are informed. Because you will notice that a lot of the conversation veer off from the 9-point agenda.
Then on age, let us not soft pedal here. Leadership is never given, inanyakuliwa.
CMD Kenya Chair Leader Bshiro Halake says the forum is meant to engage in dialogue and unite on important issues such as strengthening the multi-party democracy, promoting social justice, respect for the human rights and their fundamental freedoms.
So yes, there are people who say we shouldn't have rallies because it's bringing out some maybe sentiments. But is that not the point of dialogue? Is that not the point of us actually saying, let's look at ourselves in the mirror? I know I was asked about maybe in Narok what happened. But if that is the sentiment of the people that live there, it's okay, let it be brought on the table. Let's deal with it. So I don't think the answer is to say, let's stop and let everybody shut up.
The forum is a replication of the Sweden's Politicians' Week and Denmark's People's Meeting. Reporting for Ebru TV, I'm Jeff Khaemba.
Now, the Office of the Director of Criminal Investigations, DCI Judge Cant, has ruled out the possibility of Sergeant Kipyegon Kenei's murder was suicidal. Demonstrating the last moments of Kenei's murder, the DCI released details of the investigations on the murder. The DCI director stated that Kenei's murder was a cold murder which was stage-managed, as our reporter Amelia Kisienya explains in the following story.
Detectives have been trying to unravel the series of events and what led to the death of slain Sergeant Kipyegon Kenei at his house in Nairobi's Villa Franca estate. And finally, the details have ruled out the possibility that the deceased went suicidal. Laying out last moments details from the investigations this afternoon was the DCI Judge Cant, and while demonstrating the events of the murder, Cant cited that Kenei's murder was a cold murder and was well stage managed.
This evidence is actually to show that we have finished the first piece of our investigation, that it was not actually suicide, but it was cold murder, which was well executed, stage managed, but unfortunately, our experts here are smarter than the cold killers.
Cant further refuted Deputy President's statement that former Sports Minister Rashid Chesa, a suspect behind the 39 billion fake arm deal, was at Deputy President's office for 23 minutes. The CCTV footage, however, shows that he was around for 1 hour, 23 minutes.
The footage only shows the one which we were given for the 23 minutes. It shows our suspect, who already been presented to court with the involvement of international organized crime or fraud. And that is one Rashid Chesa. And the two victims enter Arambe House Annex, and it did not show anywhere the involvement of the deceased.
From the forensic examination extracted, Chesa was seen entering the office alongside two white men, while Kenei was seen calling someone, seemingly receiving instructions. From the investigations, the DCI is now sure that Kenei was murdered and at least 3 strangers were involved. Kenei was found in his pajamas when he was found dead, and there was no sign of struggle at his house. Post-mortem results done by the government pathologist Johansen Odwar on the body of the sergeant revealed that Kenei died of a gunshot wound by a bullet fire under his chin, which exited through his forehead. No other wounds were discovered other than the bullet's entry on the chin and exit on the forehead, with the gun believed to have been used placed at close skin contact. Amelia Kisienya for Ebru TV.
Now, suspended Kenya Airways employee Ayub has resumed duty today at the JKIA after the Kenya Airways cancelled his suspension. The High Court further gave the airline 14 days to file responses in the case that Gire sued the company for the unlawful suspension of a video he allegedly shared on social media platforms of a Chinese plane landing at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport.
Kenya Airways employee Ayub can now breathe a sigh of relief after the High Court ordered that his employer cancel his suspension. Justice Weldon Korir further extended orders barring his arrest pending the hearing of his case. The court had on Monday stopped the DPP and the DCI from arresting and prosecuting Gire over alleged criminal charges of terrorism. According to the court documents, Gire was charged after he allegedly recorded and shared a video on social media showing 239 passengers alighting from a China Southern airline at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport on February 26th. Gire, who is an assistant security agent at KQ, had last week said that his life was in danger following threats he received from his boss and strange calls from unknown people.
For my life, based on the threats that the head of corporate security for Kenya is threatened me in his office when we were just 2 of us on the 27th of February. Yes.
Transport Cabinet Secretary James Macharia Wednesday clashed with members of parliament over the decision by Kenya Airways to suspend him for allegedly recording a video that exposed the arrival of a China Southern Airlines plane ferrying 239 passengers. Members of joint health committees of the Senate and National Assembly were of the view that Mr. Ali's act had saved the country from a possible coronavirus infection and exhorted the state to honor him instead. But the CS would hear none of it and dismissed the KQ employee as a criminal who should be locked up for breach of security at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport.
Now, cabinet secretaries will be entitled to an advisor and consultant to be appointed competitively for a 3 renewable term. According to the new regulations by the Public Service Commission (PSC), the employees will not serve beyond the tenure upon the death of the state officers under their charge.
The new rules are contained in the Public Service Commission Regulations 2020, recently approved by the National Assembly Committee on Delegated Legislation. The PSC will also take charge of the appointment of principal secretaries during a transition from one administration to another. It will also determine credentials of persons appointed as advisors to the President and to the Deputy President, as well as personnel for retired presidents. Apart from credentials, the agency will also have more say on who it recruits as health fitness instructors, support staff, cooks, housekeepers, and gardeners. Permanent secretaries' recruitment will equally be competitive, hence less political. The call for such applications will be advertised in 2 newspapers of national circulation. The legislation signed by PSC Chair Stephen Kirogo further seeks to streamline the appointment of expatriates, acting appointments, as well as ways of instilling discipline in the public service. The agency has acquired powers to determine the number of advisory staff to be appointed for the President and the Deputy President. Cabinet and principal secretaries, as well as chief executive officers of parastatals and state agencies, will also have to request the PSC to appoint their personal assistants (PS). They will also be bound by the Public Service Code of Conduct and sign the oath of secrecy under the Official Secrets Act. PSC says such appointees will not have any supervisory role over the public officers, even as the Commission seeks to redraw the career progression guidelines for all cadres of staff. A new staff grading structure will be drawn, hence the possibility of civil service shake-up in the near future. To deal with officers seeking to stay beyond retirement age, state officers with a supervisory role will inform PSC within 6 months of such person's contract expiry. The changes are a culmination of efforts by the Public Service Ministry led by Margaret Kobia to streamline the service delivery in public offices. Busara Naman for Airways TV.
Now in business, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, has warned 5 banks in the country against taking insurance compensation for 721 million Kenya shillings fine that was imposed on lenders for failing to report suspicious transactions linked with the theft of funds at the National Youth Service (NYS). The banks entered a deferred prosecution deal with the DPP and the DCI and will offer information about the people who deposited the money in those accounts.
While speaking in the presence of various bank directors, the DPP said the banks had paid their fines and that the banks had entered a deferred prosecution deal with the DPP and will offer information about the people who deposited the money into those accounts. The banks present were Equity, Cooperative, Standard Chartered, KCB, and Diamond Trust Bank.
Where we've entered into a number of deferred agreements with a number of banks who are represented here today. And you can see the CEOs from KCB, Equity, Cooperative Bank, Standard Chartered, and Diamond Trust Bank. In relation to a number of issues from NYS investigations and other investigations that we've undertaken.
The DPP said the banks were not guilty of any graft charges but had simply not reported suspicious amounts of money being deposited. He also said that a total of 395 million had been collected so far and that the money was deposited in the prosecution fund and would be restituted to the appropriate institutions that lost money.
This is just the banks had failed to report suspicious transactions. They were not part and parcel of the corruption crime or the graft crime itself. Our attempt to find resolutions in some of the many corruption issues that we've been dealing with. We've therefore come in agreement with the banks, and a total of 385 million has been realized by us, and all this money will be deposited in the prosecution fund and will be restituted back to the various institutions or areas that money was lost in.
The DPP said he had also worked in conjunction with the DCI and the EACC to carry out the operation. He also dismissed claims that he was involved in some illegal activities.
The DCI, we worked together in most of these cases and were part of the process of the negotiations. EACC is also a partner, and we've also worked with them in a number of these cases and have agreed to come up with this jointly. I know there was insinuation that maybe some of this money, I pocketed some of this money, me and the DCI, just as there are other insinuations out there. Your maneno, just wishful thinking.
For Hebrew News, I'm Musa Amir.
22 minutes past the hour here on the Primetime News. We hit the break here on the program. When we come back, we'll finish up with the business stories, get some sports stories, and later cross over to the discussion which pertains the disjointed war on graft amid the fallout between the DCI and the DPP, despite coming out to refute those claims just as a matter of media creation. We'll be talking to Member of Parliament Millie Odhiambo and governance and policy analyst Ben Mulua after that break here on the program, and stay up for that discussion here on the program. This is the Primetime News.